Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome to Galactic
Welcome
Earth
to Galactic Earth
Fusion.
Fusion.
We have a special
We have a
treat today.
special treat today.
Not only do we
Not
have
only
Michael
do we have
Kopf,
Michael Kopf,
but I'm
but I'm
broadcasting
broadcasting
from
from
Sacred
Sacred
Synergy
Synergy
Temple
Temple
Space,
Space
Healing
Healing
Center,
Center
and
and
Airbnb.
Airbnb.
And can you guys
And
hear
can you
this
guys hear
thing?
this thing?
Unfortunately, no, but it looks really cool. I love the flickering light on the top and the energy that's coming off of it.
Okay, I'm going to turn it up for a minute. Well, I better
Well,
not.
I better not.
It's gonna go through its cycle. This is called the paradigm. Now you probably are starting to hear it. It actually has vibration too, so it vibrates. It's an analog device. It was developed and engineered by a man named August Worley, who worked for Robert Moog of Moog Synthesizers. The pyramid on top has the same like dimensions of 51 degrees or whatever that connects to the Great Pyramid. Yeah, I apologize for the echo. There is probably going to be an echo until I close this window of the phone out, but this came to me at the last minute for me to show you guys this. If anybody's ever in that Western North Carolina, in the Asheville area, to come stay at Sacred Synergy. So let me give you another tour of some other things here. This is a hyperbaric chamber. And then there's all kinds of mats with crystals, and here's the bed, because this bed actually vibrates. So you get on this massage table with these headphones, and maybe you can hear it now.
I heard something for a second, but yeah.
You did? Okay, here.
Yeah, we're hearing that.
But I figured what a great way to start riding into the unknown, because this will give you a massage with sound. It shakes and vibrates your body with analog sound. So it goes to a cellular level. I'm not going to get into the science behind it, because this was an impromptu thing, but I also want to show you the healing mats, and then I'll give a tour downstairs, and then I do have to turn this off. So, Michael, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, actually. How are you?
I'm great. I mean, except for being hot. It's hot as Hades. I'm telling you, I can't believe that the air conditioning's not keeping up with it today, because we're going to be in the high 90s and things like that. So we're going to shut this baby down. Say bye to the paradigm, you guys.
Bye-bye, Paradigm. Talk about heat. It's 90 degrees out right now, and we're not even noon yet.
Oh, I know.
We've been over 100 for the past couple of days.
Oh my God, I hope you have good air conditioning.
I do. To give you an idea how hot it is, when I take and lay down at night, it's 76 on the air conditioning, and I feel cold.
Wow.
Wow.
That's a really cool space you're in. Oh, I like the hat.
I think we're good now.
I think we're good.
There we go.
Now just to plug this
Now
in.
just to plug this in.
Shouldn't have an echo anymore.
Nope, no echo.
That was just an impromptu thing,
and
yeah, I had to wear the hat. And I've been wearing these hats long before Sean Bond. So just if people think, oh, Sean Bond wears these hats, but his is green and this is gray, and I collect witches' hats. And because we're riding into the unknown on a magic carpet, I feel, why not? I still have an echo. What do I do?
I don't hear an echo, and so what you can do is check your mic settings and just see if you have the back, eliminating back feed, then the background noise.
Huh. Oh, you know what? I don't have it now. I don't think. A little bit. You think I should go out and come back in? I'm afraid to do that, though.
No, I think you're fine. It's nobody else is hearing it.
I think it's the energy in here. I think it's just. Hi, Julia. It's good to see Julia too. Boy, she missed the beginning of it. Go back and watch the beginning of this because of where I am. I'm staying in the Sacred Synergy Healing Center. Gina hears an echo. Okay, Michael, why don't you start talking, and I'm going to go back out and come back in, okay? Because I think that's the thing to do if I can.
All right. Well, so as she mentioned, my name is Michael, and when I was growing up, I always knew there was something different about the world that we live in and where I was, and so I didn't really fit in with a lot of people, and so I've decided to take and go within and do my own homework and my own research into, the kind of life that I wanted to live and how to answer what was calling me. And so, with some family drama that came up, I decided, in looking into religions, looking into different modalities, that metaphysics was the right one for me. It gave me the freedom to be me. It gave me the freedom to learn what I wanted to do, what I was feeling drawn to do, and it also, I found it to be the most accepting of all the faiths. So it's like there's no I have not come across somebody in metaphysics that says, "Oh, you're on the wrong metaphysics path. It's this path that you have to be on." Where Catholics are like, "Oh no, Protestant is the way," or "No, Lutheran is the way," or "Oh no, it's this." And so that was another thing that I liked, is the fact it was more accepting, and it was more of an internal journey than having to go somewhere, talk to someone, tell them what's going on, and then they say, "Okay, you're absolved of this," and you're good to go. You don't have to do any work. Unfortunately, I found you still got to do the work. There's no escaping that. You're muted, Missy.
Thank you. Technical difficulties. Did you have a certain experience when you were a child? And I want to just say hi to Sheila, and I want to say hi to Julia and Christy, and to go back and watch the beginning of this because I gave a tour of where I am.
So was there a aha moment? I would say. So one moment I would say that was kind of an aha moment was as my family is tearing apart and picking sides, so to speak, and doing whatever they were doing, I went and I started thinking, what's wrong with me? How am I broken? How can I fix myself so that I can fix this family situation? Because I decided to take it on personally, thinking that was my mission, to remedy the family and bring it back together. Well, little did I know that that journey was actually the catalyst that was going to launch me into who I become, and also learning that there is no fixing the family situation as a whole. You can only fix your part in it. And so that was the great insight that unfortunately took me like 20, 30 years to learn. But hey, we all can't be, on top of the ball all the time, some things do take time to learn. But in this journey, though, of trying to fix myself, it got me to where I learned Huna magic, which is the ancient Hawaiian healing arts. I learned tarot. I learned gypsy palm reading. Didn't take, sorry, I don't read palms. I just didn't have a knack for it, but I did take a course. I learned radical forgiveness, timeline therapy. I learned... Oh, what was some of the other ones that I learned? Actually, I think that might be most of them that I learned as a kid. And so...
Probably
one
crystals,
thing that...
working with crystals and things.
I would work with crystals. I never was taught that. I would just walk into a crystal store, and it would be dangerous for me because I would I would go, oh, look at the stones. And then I'd be like, this one's calling me. This one's calling me. This one's calling me. And I would go home with like 5 or 6 stones, and then I would wear them for a while, feel the energy coming off of them. Then I would set them down somewhere, and then I would go, and then I took a Reiki course, and the couple that was leading it, walking around doing the symbol initiation at the end, get behind me and go, oh, this one's a natural one, but we'll give you the symbols anyway. And so in my mind, I didn't need to learn any more Reiki. I was natural, so I stopped looking at it. But I also started to learn being told you can't heal yourself, like with Reiki, you have to have somebody else do it. That never resonated with me. I would find myself working on myself. And when I would get massages at a metaphysical bookstore, the lady that was giving us massages was a friend of ours, and it was deep tissue. And I will say, for everybody that does deep tissue, yes, it has its benefits, but not when you have super long nails. That would be the most uncomfortable to me when she would work on my shoulders and dig the nails into the skin. I would be like leaving more tense than when I arrived. But then when it subsided, I was more relaxed. And so I would always complain to my parents, can't we find somebody who doesn't have long nails? It hurts. And I have a high pain tolerance, by the way. So when I say that, I'm being serious. It really hurts.
Maybe
But
they're doing too with the nails.
that's what it felt like. But so, but in learning the Reiki, I started remembering stuff that I would do as a kid that I've forgotten. Like, in elementary school, I remember a female student was sitting near me and started to complain of a headache, and I said, I can help you with that. And she goes, what do you mean? I said, watch. And I would put my hands like this on the side of her face, and then when I took them away, her headache was gone. And never gave it a second thought. I just, I was like, hey, this is, apparently who I am. This is what I can do. So, that's, okay. And later learning, oh, that's energy healing. Didn't know that. So I was doing it before I even knew what it was. And so I've kind of grown up through the most interesting times, and I loved reading Shakespeare, and it is kind of funny that, Shakespeare's biggest curse is may you live in interesting times, and I was like, oh boy, have I lived through some interesting times. And the one thing, though, that I think sets me apart that I've learned is in growing up, every experience has two sides to it. We can either let it beat us down, or we can rise up and learn from it. And so I learned at a young age it's easier to just rise up and not take it personal, not take on, I must, be failure because this keeps happening or that happens. I instead looked at it and was like, well, why is this happening? Okay, so maybe I need to change my verbiage. Maybe I need to change the way I think. And so I was constantly in a state of adaptation and growth. And when people look at me today, when I share like some of the hardships that I went through as a kid, they have this stunned look on their face, like their jaw's like on the floor, so to speak. And I'm like, what? And they're like, how are you smiling right now? How are you so happy? How are you such high energy when you lived a past where most people would be like in the darkest hole, just avoiding everybody and avoiding life? And I was like, well, I'm me. And I'm like, this is just who I am. I just naturally find the goodness in everything, find the goodness in people until they do something. And then I'm like, hey, don't exactly like that you do that. And if that's the way you're going to be, then unfortunately, this is where we're going to part ways. You go be you, I'll be me. Don't come after me, because then, we'll have a different relationship. But I tend to try to leave everything in the fun way of saying, like, copacetic, because I just love saying that word, copacetic.
So what I'm hearing alcoholism. You never mentioned that word, but I'm hearing something like somewhere, somebody.
So I never really was around alcoholism. My mom would talk about having family members where one was a happy drunk, one was an alcoholic to where he would go into rehab, then he would come out, he would come over to the family, open the trunk, and the trunk would be full of alcohol. And they're like, "What are you doing? You just got out of rehab." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm ready for a drink." I'm like, "Well, that place doesn't work." And what I started to realize from observing these, situations and hearing about them, because my parents never really put us around like family members who were drunk. If they were going to get drunk, we tended to stay away from them as kids, and we would only hear about them. But what I started observing in my mind is these people aren't getting drunk just to get drunk, and it's not working. It's they're stuck where they are, they're happy where they are, so they're going to be that, and nothing's going to change that until they change themselves. And so I started to learn, okay, yeah, we can't change anyone. Only they can change themselves. And so I was blessed to learn that. And to be honest, I didn't even realize that's where I learned that from until just now talking about it.
I didn't know we were going to go down the healing journey as much. So right now I want to give a disclaimer, and I got to do something about the echo. So I'm going to try something in a minute. We are not diagnosing, treating, or prescribing. This is a theoretical practice for entertainment and educational purposes only. Because this stuff seems to affect any kind of addiction is connected with narcissism. Okay, the echo's gone. Did you do something?
I turned echo cancellation off on my microphone.
Thank you. Yay! Do the
I didn't realize it had turned on. I usually have it off.
Got it. Okay. Because there's something about if there's any of these narcissistic, sociopathic, alcohol or drug anywhere in our family line. So even if your parents weren't that, it affected them because they were dealing with it, and then it affects you and you're having to balance. It makes me think of with your healing journey, I see with you like the 4 agreements and things like that, these kinds of energies. So you can come into this it's a circle, and you can come in anywhere. Some people come in because they're looking at ghosts or UFOs, or they were abducted, or some people it's their children get sick because they go to school and they have to have the needle technology. So, and then it leads to everything else. So with you, I'm hearing it's coming more from a psychological type of balancing and things like that, and then maybe all the other stuff started to come in. Do you have any memories of ever being taken or finding yourself floating outside? Like for me, I noticed that I would be hovering on the ceiling. If I had a high fever, I'd instantly be out of my body. And then I'd find myself in front of the refrigerator or something like that, or I'd find myself flying and I didn't know how I left my body, how I got back in my body. I had all those kinds of things as a kid. Did you have any of those kinds of things?
So I did, and I will state, an easier disclaimer for everyone. These are my experiences and worked for me. Doesn't mean they're going to work for you. So yeah, don't take and quit doing anything just because it seems to work for me. With that being said, so I grew up in the astral plane. I
Wow.
I as a little kid was in the astral realm, floating around, and how I learned about it was I didn't know at the time what it was, but I would be taken up onto a floating ship in space, and I would be in my, I guess, human form is how I would describe it. And I'm just standing on the deck, and Isis and Ra are standing there. And so I would talk with them and be like, what's going on? And they're like, this is, your ability. You can travel out here. And so I was like, well, what is here? And so I started getting curious what's around. I would go and I would spend all night, like I would travel to different worlds, different dimensions, different realities, different timelines, and never really realizing that's what I was doing. I just viewed myself thinking about something and it would start to appear in front of me. So I was like, wow. And so I went to the ship for quite a while as I was getting familiar with everything, and then I was shown like there's these jump pads at the moon, and so I would see myself float up to the moon, stand on this jump pad, and then I would be on Mars or on Pluto or Andromeda or out there. And I started thinking to myself, wait a minute, I didn't need a jump pad to get to Ra's ship. Why do I need a jump pad to get to these places? So I started to learn I could travel on the astral plane without these. And I would meet some people along the way that were, I could sense were like friends that I knew. And so I would look at them being on the jump pads, and I was like, "Oh, where are you headed to? I bet I can beat you there." And I said, "But I don't need the jump pad, so let's race." And sure enough, I would be where they were headed before they got there, and I would kind of tease them and be like this, going, "Oh, you finally got here. What took so long?" And I just, was being playful and just having fun. And I realized, though, growing up in the astral realm, there are places that you can go, and there are places you can go, but you shouldn't go, and there are places you definitely don't go.
Right.
And,
Absolutely.
but in learning all of this and experiencing all of this, I would find myself waking up in the morning feeling more tired than when I went to sleep. And I was
Oh,
like, this isn't good. I need to, figure something out. And so something inside of me just like started to like make my body, like react in its own way. And I realized next thing I know, I'm standing in this blank space and I'm like, what is this? And what's going on? And I could feel an energy coming from deep within me, rising up and going outward. And next thing I know is there's a planet in front of me that wasn't there before. And I'm like, did I create that? And I was like, wait, if I created that, can I create this? And I would start, and all of a sudden, like water would appear on it. And I was like, oh, hey, I can, this, I'm creating this. Well, then I create like an island in this water. And I'm like, okay, we'll put some obelisks on the corners for energy amplification and everything. And I'm like, okay. And I was like, well, there needs to be a structure in the center. Well, what structure really is calling to me right now? Oh, what about a full pyramid? So I put a pyramid in the center, and the tips of the obelisk would match up to the pyramid, and I could start to see like lightning energy going around. And I was like, oh, this is my energy. Okay. Lightning. Yeah, I've had electricity flow through my body and being unharmed. That's a story for later, but I then realized, okay, and so I walk inside this pyramid and I'm like, I need a place to regenerate because I can't wake up tired. And so I found myself floating in this pyramid, and then I would lay on my back kind of in a weird way, and I could feel the electricity entering the pyramid, entering me, and I would feel my body being restored. And I would notice if I had, say, a cut on my arm from something that happened while I was in the astral realm, it would regenerate on the spot. And when I woke up, I would be like, hey, the mark is gone. Oh, I can heal here. Oh, this is my regeneration spot. And then I was like, oh, my alarm's going off. I need to wake up. Well, I would find myself then back in my body and wake up. I got up the next day and went through the day. And then when I went to sleep, did my normal travels. But then I was like, hey, where's that world that I created to do regeneration? And I heard in my voice, it's not time yet. You still have time out here to do stuff. And so I thought, well, being creation, what's something I can do? Well, I found myself going to a dimension out there, and I was like, hey, a purple sky would be really cool. And so I started creating this planet, forming it, and there was purple sky. And then I was like, I always think it's cool when I look at those mystical images where the land is floating above the waters and the waters are draping off the sides of the land. So I created that. And on this floating land, I was like, well, there's a lot of gardens, there's a lot of, stuff that needs tending to. Let me put some people on here that'll enjoy this and let them multiply and do whatever. So I'm not really thinking about how this all is going to look. I'm just doing what I'm kind of feeling drawn to doing in the realm. And I wake up the next day refreshed, and a couple of weeks goes by here on the Earth realm, and I'm like, hey, I wonder, did that really happen? And I would think about that world, and all of a sudden, I'm like floating in the skies above on the planet above the floating island, and there's like this multitude of people. And they're like, oh, our God has arrived. And I'm like, your God's arrived? What are you talking about? And I'm like, who's your God? Who are you guys worshiping? And they're like, oh, we're worshiping the one that created us. And I was like, created you? And it didn't dawn on me what's going on. And then it's like, oh, you think I'm a God because of this? I'm like, I'm not a God. Don't worship me as a god. And they're like, but you created us, you brought us into existence. I'm like, no, you guys, I thought of this and you guys came with that thought. So I'm not a god, people. I'm not a god. Don't worship me like a god.
A lot to unpack here. There's a lot to unpack that I want to bring in, okay? Because that's a great segue. So, first of all, I'm thinking of the movie Robin Williams, What Dreams May Come.
Right.
Earlier, you said something about being quickly, and I thought of Flash. Now, I don't know if you're more for the DC universe or the Marvel, or maybe both, but something about Flash. And when you say this, I think of also the Eternals. And what Jim and Matt were talking about is that the gods were actually the elementals, like, like Thor, and, because I work with Thor's hammer and things like this. In, I don't know if I call it the astral or beyond the astral, to work with storms, like seeing, plasma lights coming off the crystals of an etheric Thor's hammer, like working with these storms and things like that. So, yeah, this is an interesting and then the movie Tron. Remember Tron? How Jeff Bridges wrote the program, and he had to actually insert himself into the program because the program broke down. So some of us have memory possibly of being from another universe. So whether it's our oversoul or avatar or a Rishi self or something entirely different, because if it's not part of, this Milky Way galaxy coming out of M31 Andromeda, maybe it's M33 Triangulum, I don't know, but I just wanted to bring all those things are, because isn't it interesting how anything would want to worship something, which is again giving power away, like we do on this planet, whether it's to the education system, to the church and religion, to the medical system, to the political system, always needing a savior to fix the problem.
It is, and you're gonna appreciate this fact of every movie you've mentioned, I have.
Really?
And I was told by my guides growing up, any movie that I watch that I feel like has, a sense of familiarity, so I buy it and watch it multiple times, that is because I have lived that movie. That's a piece of my
Two
story.
more coming real quick before I forget. Two more coming. Jupiter Ascending and
Yep.
Melancholia. Okay, go ahead.
Melancholia doesn't sound familiar, but Jupiter Ascending, oh man. My
The
favorite,
planets, and look that up.
yeah, that's a huge disclosure, but his ability to like glide in the air, I was like, oh man, that to me that was so cool, and I was like, man, I can't wait for the day when I can do that here and be like, yeah, and traveling by just floating on the air and riding the airwaves. I'm like, yeah, and
That's why I put the magic carpet, because a lot about this floating. And when I heard, riding into the unknown, of course, I thought of Art Bell, and he always used to play "Ride My Seesaw" by the Moody Blues. That was his opening song, because the guy would say, "Want to take a ride?" and then that song would come on, da 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 da, ride my seesaw, da da da. So I think of that when I think of you, this whole magic carpet. So would you say that's like your psionic power that's floating in space type of a thing, and then visualizing these realms that come to you through this floating technique?
I would say it's part of it. And to answer Gina's question about is this in a book, pieces of it are in a book, and pieces of it are in a book I'm working on right now. But I have two more books that I'm working on, and then another project I'm about to start. And I'm thinking I might be, doing a book purely around this type of topic if they don't like seem to mesh up in the way that I'm writing the other stuff. But yeah, I definitely have a feeling this could be fun for people to read, and I might do this as a screenplay. Somebody, well, I can say somebody. It's Laura Ferguson. While we do our channeling sessions, we talk, and she's like, "Yeah, you should write a screenplay and make it into a movie." And so I've never really thought about what part of my story I'd make a movie out of, but it sounds like this would be a really fun movie to watch and everything. And I
So
think
how did you
though,
become a writer? How did you become a writer? I need to hear this because I need to write my story.
so I've been told ever since I was 20 I should write a book, and because of the life that I lived and the life I'm living, and I would look at everybody and I would laugh and I would be like, yeah, yeah, not gonna happen because nobody's gonna read my story, and I wouldn't even begin to know how to put this onto paper and read it, and people want to read it. And so I just got in my head about it and was like, nope, nope. And every time they'd say it, I would just laugh at them and say, yeah, uh-huh. Well, then I was doing an interview with Chris McKennell. He is the um Warren Society. He's the nephew of the Warrens in the paranormal field, or the grandson. He's the grandson. Sorry, he's the son or grandson. Well, in talking with him, he was talking about he's writing a book, and I said, "Yeah, everybody tells me, you write a book, but I don't know what to write." And I also am a firm believer of if you bring up topics, you're going to relive those topics and have to relearn those topics and giving energy to those topics. And so I was like, I'm not really having the energy to do that right now. And he goes and says to me, it actually doesn't bring up emotions and everything. It's very cathartic. He was describing it as. And so I sat down like the next day and was like, well, if I was to write a book, what would I write about? And so next thing I know, I have listed out a book that has like 13 chapters. And I'm like, okay. And it's my entire story. Like, I'm like, okay, if I was to do my entire story in one book, what would it look like? And I would start to write on different chapters at different times. And as I'm looking at this, I'm going and I'm saying to myself, this paranormal chapter is over 100 pages already, and that's just one chapter. This book is going to be huge, and I don't know that, somebody picking up this book is going to care about this paranormal chapter or this metaphysical, adventure chapter that I had that's like 80 pages by itself. And these others are smaller chapters. And so I'm like, what, and so I was like, nobody's going to want to read this part or that part. So why am I putting this all together? So I stepped away from it. Come the following year, which would be at this time 2025. Yeah, it's very recent that I started writing. And a friend had me look at her book and look at some images, and I was like, hey, this is really cool. And when I finished looking at it with her and, looking at the images and helping her get the images right, size wise, and ready for the book, something in my head goes, hey, you have a book you need to look at. And so I look at this book, and instead of looking at it and going, okay, let's, fine tune this or fine tune that, and let's, go with it, I start looking at this book and going, well, this chapter is a book unto itself. This chapter is a book unto itself. These 3 chapters are a book unto itself. This, group of chapters are a book unto itself. There's 4 books here. And I was like, well, this book looks like it's almost done. The paranormal book. I'm like, hey, let's just go in and add a little bit. And at this point, Selena messages me, and I'm talking to her about books, and she's like, hey, can I edit your books? And I was like, are you sure you want to? And she's like, yeah. And she's like, hey, I also do artwork. I'm like, hey, do you mind creating covers and doing illustration work? She's like, I'd love to. So I send her what I have, and she edits it and writes me back, and she's like, this is a really cool story. You got to publish this. We got to make this cover. And I'm like, but what do I call it? I don't know what to call this book, and there's 4 of them. And she goes, there's 4. I said, yeah, that's different aspects of my life. And Selena goes, give me a day. Well, it didn't even take a day. And she writes me back and goes, what about calling it The Awakening? And I was like, oh, I like that, because it was my story leading up to today. And I was like, that's a good way to put it. So that's where the Awakening series came from. And after I got those 4 books published, I then started writing about topics that people just were constantly asking me about. And so that I was able to write my next book in like a month and have it ready to be published with images. And I was like, oh, and I took it, and my mom actually edited this one. And so it took me a little longer because she's a English fanatic, and she's like, you got to use this grammar. You got to use this grammar. This is the way this has to flow. This is going to. And so she did a great job keeping the flavor of my language, but bringing it up to, like, you'd almost say like college textbook level.
And did you use a writing app, or I mean, did you do it on a desktop? Did you do it on a laptop? Because this is good for other people, myself included, that want to get their books out, and some of us have to backpedal. I mean, is it a writing app? I know you're self-published through Amazon, correct? And I know if you're supposed
Correct.
to upload your, I looked at that part of it, but it's getting everything down and organized. And was there any certain tools that you used besides the
So I talked with another author who published and has is published through a company. And I said, how did you start? And he goes, well, I would write, but I realized in writing that I would find myself looking at doing this or that to make it work, but then I'd have to redo it because of the size of the book. And so to give myself a break from that headache, I preset my book. And I was like, oh, how did you preset it? And he goes, well, is your book going to be, and pardon me, I have dyslexia, so it's either I think it's 6 by 9 or 9 by 6, is, he goes, the size of book that I do. And that seems to be a good size for everybody. And so I thought, okay, cool. So I'm writing this down, the dimensions of the book. And I was like, I'm not going to use AI. And so he's like, well, if you're not doing that, just write it in Word. And because when you go to upload it to Amazon, they want a Word document or a PDF document. So write it in either one of those so you don't have to go in and translate the document and go and fix all the little changes if the font doesn't work. And he's like, and don't use fancy fonts. This font is kind of the font that everybody has. It's a generic font. And so I was like, thank you. And so I start writing, and I'm writing with all these experiences unfolding and everything. And I started to look at it and go, well, how do I make a table of contents to this? I really can't. And so I was like, well, do I need one? No. And then when I started to do chapters, thinking, well, this book kind of has different sections, I can do chapters. I looked at it and I was like, in my mind, I said, it always frustrates me when you look at books and it either says chapter 1 or it's a title of a chapter. Why they don't, mix them and have fun with it. And somebody said, now that I think about it, you're right. You either have a title of the chapter or you have a chapter number. And so I went in my book and I'm like, I'm going to break conformity. So in one of my books, it's like chapter 1, aka the beginning. And it's like I would have these like little fun little nuances that I put to them. And this stems from the original book. The original book, I was like, every chapter had its fun, like, oh, chapter 2, the teenage years. It's like, it was like kind of like my way of being funny, but also saying, this is where I'm at in life. This is what was going on. This is this. And so I thought, well, let me do page numbers. Well, when I went to do the page numbers, Word only lets me start from page 1. It doesn't let me say, hey, page 3, where we actually start the book, is page 1. So I was like, forget page numbers. I just won't have any. It'll be fine. Well, in the book I'm working on right now, I decided, oh, I'm going to do page numbers on this book. And so I'm writing the book, and then I'm going to save it over to where it has the title page, the dedication page, and I also like to put a warning page. That's what I call it. And it's a page that is the page right before you start reading that says, just so you know, you are about to enter the realm of my mind, my experiences. If you feel up to the challenge, turn the page. If not, thank you for getting this far, kind of motif to it. And so it kind of, to me, is a fun way of setting everybody up to, yeah, this isn't going to be your normal book. This isn't going to be a normal, oh, here's the adventure of this kid. I'm like, it's going to be confusing. It's going to be all over the place. And I even make little disclaimers of this flows in the form of my memory. So if the timeline doesn't fit, well, guess what? Neither does my memory flow in a straight line. So have fun.
What about this? Like for somebody that like me, I've never even used Word in my life. I tried to do this with Grok. I've handwritten it on receipts. I've handwritten it here and there. I tried to use Grok. I noticed Grok is not compatible between Apple and Android, where ChatGPT is. So I lost a lot of it because if you don't save the PDFs, it's gone. I'm going to have to start trying talk to text. I've downloaded the transcripts for some of these shows, but have yet to do anything with it yet because I don't have the storage. So I'm going to have to get myself a laptop. I think that's first and foremost. I've
Right.
had to do everything. I think I got to get a laptop before I
Um, I, I would use a laptop, and I personally would stay away from AI text because I've noticed to where like
it screws
I
up.
I've had introductions to where AI says I do something that I don't do.
You have to double check it. You do because I just
And
keep saying Soda has green eyes, and it would make her eyes brown or whatever. I had to say it over and over. But what it was good for is if you want Wikipedia things to reference in there, it'll do it. Like when I had a chapter about Area 51 and Art Bell's Alien Carvel, it brought all this stuff about Bob Lazar. I mean, it had all this extra stuff. So I did, if I want to put that in there, I didn't have to look it up. Any footnotes, it's great for that.
right. The other reason why I stay away from AI for the text is because it's my story, my experiences, my memories. And so if AI fills in blanks that I don't have memory of, and say you read the book and you're like, "Oh, so tell me about this experience." And in my mind, I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. What experience? And I need more context. And then when it gets to the part that's my words, I'll be like, oh, that. Oh, sorry. AI created that. I don't know really much about that. I feel like, oh, I just lost credibility. So that's why I stay away from AI text usage, is because you read the book, you ask me a question about the book, I'll know exactly what you're talking about, what book you're in, because it's all my memory and verbiage. So I will have recall versus, oh, somebody else put words in my mouth and now I got to figure out what that means. But to go back and really truly answer your question about, writing, how I do my writing when I first started, just like when, let me give you the example of my paranormal book. So I was like, hey, this is my paranormal journey. This is the places I've investigated. Blank, 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 blank. Well, I was like, do I put these in the beginning? Do I say this is the middle or the end? And I was like, forget it. Let's just start writing. Let's just start, sharing what I know about each of these parts. What do I remember about this location? Let me write it down. Okay, what do I know about this location now? Write it down. And I didn't care about, is this flowing? Is this all sounding, like this is a fluid story? I just wanted to get everything down on paper. And so that is one thing I will say, when you start writing, don't think of it as a book, and think of it as, okay, we have this section, this section, this section. just start writing your experiences. And the beauty of that is you hand it to an editor, or you can go back when you're like, okay, I think I'm done. I got, all of the experiences in there. Then you can go back and go, okay, let me look, and you can start to look at, oh, do I remember more about this experience? No, but what if I put this sentence in and now this experience flows into this experience? And then you start to make it flow. You can add a sentence or two to make everything start to connect and start to flow in story fluid mode. And then when your editor looks at it, they're looking to make sure, hey, does this float? Does this make sense? Are we repeating anywhere? How's the spelling? Is the grammar right? They're doing all the heavy
Right.
lifting, actually.
Is your paragraph, I mean, is one sentence a paragraph? That tends to be me. That I'll have these I always used to get in trouble for what they called run on sentences. I would just want to say hi to some new people that just came in the chat. And for you guys to go back and watch the first 5 minutes of this. Yes, there's some echo and technical things, but I'm actually staying at a healing center right now, and I showed this pyramid that does sound called the Paradigm, invented by August Worley. So you'll get a tour of the Sacred Synergy Retreat Center that I'm at. So how did you get into the paranormal? I mean, what was your first paranormal experience? For me, it was ghosts, because I knew at my great grandmother's house that somebody died in that house. I thought they were in the attic. It turns out, that way back, because this was my great grandmother, they used to have funerals in the house way back.
Yeah, and so my paranormal journey is quite an interesting one because it unfolds in several layers. Because, as I mentioned, growing up metaphysical by choice, a lot of experiences I was having, I would say, oh, these are, metaphysical experiences. I wouldn't define them as a paranormal experience. So, like, an example is I would play games as a teenager with shadow beings. I just thought they were beings there, and we would have fun of I I would see how close they would get to before I would look at them, and they disperse and disappear because they don't like to be looked at. So we created this little game about it. And when I was 2, I had a paranormal experience that I just viewed as a spiritual awakening moment. But I didn't actually start paranormal until I was in my late 30s. So actually, I think I did cross into the 40s. And I was at a meeting for an organization I was volunteering with at the time. And somebody saw me on a paranormal Facebook group and asked me if I wanted to do paranormal investigations, and I laughed at him and I said, that's funny, I'm not a TV personality, and so, I don't think I'm what you're looking for because, I'm not on TV. And they kind of were laughing and going, yeah, we really do paranormal investigating. And I was like, oh, absolutely, I'll join you. And so that's really how my paranormal journey started. And then I started to learn I was around it all my life.
There was there was a question from Jason in the chat. What exactly are the difference in elemental spirits and other spirits?
Okay, so elemental spirits, by virtue of their name, they are attached to the elements. So you'll have your water sprites or water fairies or your water spirit, you could say. You have a fire spirit, you have an air spirit. There is a spirit for spirit. And so all the elements, metal that has a spirit, these elementals are here to keep everything on this world energetically balanced. So, how it works is, so we're living on a planet called Earth. There's soil on the ground, there's dirt on the ground. We call it Earth. Well, there's Earth elementals that watch over the Earth to see that the ground is not being, destroyed or getting too toxic. And so they protect the land. The air elementals protect the air and keep harmful elements out of the air. And so the elemental spirits are truly guardian spirits of everything, and they are protective of what's around. And so we need to ask permission to enter their territory, but we don't because we've lost our belief in them, and so they've lost their belief in us. They don't do anything to help us unless we ask. Now, other spirits are, they could be alien beings, they could be different timelines bleeding through, they can be, people from the past, showing up to help take care of a place that they liked, or something happened to them, or a piece of their soul is trapped by traumatic event, and so that is still here. So those spirits are here for other reasons. Elementals can be fairy like Rainbow Flame. It is depending on how they want to make themselves visible, in my understanding. And let's see. Jason was asking if property gets elemental and people get demons and whatnot. Okay, so here's the thing about that. And again, this is my experience and my personal opinion, so I'm not, the expert, but when I have my house that's on this earth, I ask the elemental spirits of the earth to watch over everything that is on the land. That's our property. And to protect what's on the property. And to keep any energies that are non-beneficial to us off the property. Well, then, there's air around. So I go, air elementals, can you watch over the air, around our property and our vehicles and us as we're moving around, so we get protection? And I ask them to help protect. Demons. Okay, so this is where I get in trouble with some other paranormal investigators. Demons are rare. They're not hanging around this planet looking for, a spot to hang out in the hopes that someone's going to come. They have already have a food source, and they're an energy that lives off of the fear and low vibrational energies that we give off. So, likelihood of running into a demon on a paranormal investigation is very rare. I'm not going to say it won't happen or it doesn't happen. It's just most times when you get down to it, it's misidentified because we don't really understand and know what we're talking with during investigations. And so our mind creates what we think we're talking to and makes things come out to validate that, like being scratched. Well, a lady pointed out that, if you go to grab somebody's arm just to, get their attention, you could scratch them by accident. Does that make you a demon? No. And so you have to learn how to discern the energies. And if this property or location you're at has an energy that's draining you, draining all the equipment, making you feel bad, making you lose interest in life and everything, you need to get out and ground yourself first. And if you go back in and it's like, hey, it starts happening right away again, you need to leave that location because something is there that you're not prepared to mess with. And I don't recommend anybody going, I don't care how long you've been in this, don't take on a demon because you think I have divine protection. I have this, I have that. Nothing can touch me. They'll find a way because when you go to take on a demonic spirit, you have to have beyond 100% faith and belief in yourself to the point of no matter what happens, you are not going to drop your guard, drop your stance, drop your power. You are totally dedicated. And so don't engage.
You
That's
know
my
about Zach Bagans, right? With the divot box and how that actually affected his vision. I went to his museum out in Las Vegas and talk about a lot of haunted and creepy objects that actually started to make me feel really sick.
yeah.
Just being around all that stuff, it has a lot of energy. Let me tell you.
Yeah, it is. And I also I know, so people have to understand Zach Bagans is actor slash paranormal investigator.
That's
So
true. But his
he's
stuff,
entertainment. So he's going to agitate things to get entertainment. Going on an investigation, I'm like, if you start agitating something, I'll walk out because I'm like, yeah, this is pointless. I don't like being agitated. Why would I want to agitate a spirit? And the problem becomes you've now agitated this spirit. You're going home. If somebody lives in this location, you have now agitated who they live with, and they're going to pay the price of what you've done. And that's one of the reasons why, too, I don't really like watching Ghost Adventures because I don't like the premise of one being locked in a building with no way out because everybody needs to take a break and recharge. But secondly, I don't like that he agitates and then tells his cohort, okay, now you go deal with it. You go sit in that room and see what happens to you. Let's see if they're really here. I'm like, if you're going to agitate, you best be going in there and, dealing with it yourself. And I do have a friend who is an agitator, and I do investigate with him because he does stick around and he doesn't and agitate them and stir the room and energy up a bit, but he doesn't leave. And when he does leave, he tells the spirits, "Okay, I'm going over here. If you want to continue this, you can go where I'm going, or if not, you know, thank you for your time." And he like dispels it, so to speak. And so I appreciate that. And so
And here's a question from Terry. Don't you have to invite a demon in? That might be the old religious program. I think we sort of addressed that already.
actually, that is not religious programming. That is universal law.
Yeah, that's
And
universal law, definitely. And
there's a
sometimes
difference
it's
there.
by not, I would say it's by, sometimes we give our consent away unknowingly as children. Like if something comes into our bedroom and we follow them out of curiosity, we've given consent, but we may have not known what we've consented to. When I do paranormal investigations, I always like to rule out the natural elements first. Like I've always found that haunted places are seem to be more haunted if there's like mold and mildew, if there's electrical problems, if there's groundwater underneath, things like that. And I definitely don't want to agitate. And then I've noticed other things that people's thoughts actually can create like a tulpa or egregore around. I mean, I was pondering this since I think our last show, and we were talking about the Battle of Bull Run, and we were talking about, if you look at Gettysburg and why do you see that there's ghosts walking on a trail. Part of that is that's held as an imprint in the energetic field, which is a phantomal, but is it also because people want to see ghosts, so they're adding to that to make it happen? What do you think?
So I have a different opinion on the battlefields. And what my deal is, okay, you have thousands of people on both sides shooting at each other.
And the trauma too. Yeah.
And so there is huge amount of fear of, am I going to survive the day? Am I going to be able to see my loved ones? Am I going, is this my last day on this earth? Is that my brother over there? Or is my dad over there? Or, do I have family on the other side? Because that's the thing about the Civil War. Because it was America versus America in truth, it was family versus family. And so to ask somebody to kill a family member because that family member is going to kill them, that leaves a mark. That is a trauma on a whole nother level. But also, there is the fear on the field, and the energies on the field are so mixed that souls are being ripped apart on these battlefields because some people, you can be shot and you may get hit in the head in a certain way or through the heart and you just drop dead and they don't fully realize they're dead. And so we call that, residual as they're going through motions. I don't necessarily think it's they're going through motions. I think it's a soul fragment is looking for its owner. And the thing about soul fragments is, and this is where like the paranormal and metaphysical blend, but other spiritualities splinter off, is I can be an infantryman, say at Gettysburg, under the name Clyde Snarls, say for example. And he's roaming around and people talk about seeing him and other soldiers there, and you're like, hey, I need to go to this battlefield. Well, when you're there, you see the apparition of your soul fragment, and you go, hey, that's me. And you do work around that, like shadow work, and you process and you do all this kind of stuff. That piece of you that was at this battlefield that's been roaming for these hundreds of years can now be at peace and is found its way home. So it may not be seen there. Or it could be that it's like, hey, I remember the Brotherhood. My brothers are still down there. They're still looking for their fragments. So I'm going to continue to walk with them, even though I'm free of this land. I'm not here anymore. I'm choosing to come back. And so they can choose to return as a soldier, walking with their unit. And so that's the part of it that I'm starting to realize is a lot. That's why I feel like certain locations, some people have more activity around them than others, is either they're more attuned to their environment or they were there in the past and so they're experiencing life then, now, and integrating. And that's why the paranormal affects people differently, is we're all experiencing different ways and different aspects because we are humans, but we're not humans of, like, right now I'm in the form of Michael Kopf. This isn't my only form. I've had forms before this. We call them past lives. And so when we realize that, we realize, oh, you know, our ancestors may be us and they may not be, but we're all connected. And so each piece is something. That's why we're drawn to certain places. It's like, the Irish had the saying, I'm being called, Ireland is home. I'm being called home. I need to go to Ireland.
And I loved Ireland. I really did. Yep.
Yeah. And so there's pieces that draws us in. And so it's more of a soul calling than just a, oh, yeah, the hills look really nice. The scenery looks nice. So, yeah, let's go check it out. There's a deeper calling, and
The,
that's your soul reaching out.
the cliffs of Moher actually felt like the motherland. There's a lot to unpack with this. So, this is what came to me recently after doing the Biltmore Village Mystery Tour. When Hurricane Helene came through and wiped everything out, the charge is so current. So, if it's like a newer charge with what's happened with all the trauma to the land, that it's almost like it cleared all those old ghost stories out. Not that they're not there, but the one that's playing loudest is the most recent event. And I think that also happens, but I still feel that people's collective thoughts also help to create something. Like, I know when I went to Graceland in Memphis, Tennessee, I really don't feel I was connecting with Elvis's ghost per se. I'm feeling I was connected with a tulpa or egregore because people want to see his ghost, which keeps it alive.
Right. And that there's, a lot of truth in that,
When I
So,
say
well,
thoughts, I also mean emotion, people's emotion. So with these battlefields, there's a lot of emotional trauma, and that emotional trauma is a charge that's actually held in the grids. It's an electrical charge. And depending on where you're resonating on the musical scale, you may tap into the frequency of that. And that's why you see things. I mean, that's my kind of way of saying it after playing that paradigm, which is all about resonance, analog resonance.
Right. And what I find is if I go to, let's say, a jail that's from the 1800s, I'm like, hey, there are, probably been famous outlaws that have been there. So I'm going to project, oh, like, let's say going into New Mexico. Oh, Billy the Kid operated in New Mexico. So I'm going to project when I get the energy of an outlaw in a certain area. Oh, that's probably Billy the Kid. So I'm creating Billy the Kid being there through my energy and through my mind's thoughts blending. And so there's going to be something that's going to come forward on a device and it might say, yes, I'm Billy. And you're going to go, hey, Billy the Kid's here. I found, the spirit of Billy the Kid. Well, the bottom line is, I don't know that I would necessarily agree that you found Billy the Kid because, yes, he was in the Lincoln County Wars. We know that. He ran around a lot of areas. So, likelihood is, yeah, he did step foot there. Did he commit a crime there? Maybe not. Is his energy tied to there? Most likely not. And so a lot of legends and lore gets created, and so things manifest because our energy and our thoughts are so powerful that we can make it manifest. And
Right.
so we can create deals. And so that's why when I go on investigations, I always tell people before you step foot into this location, you have to, one, clear your mind, two, be open to everything around you. And when they asked me about, what do you mean by being open? I said, and I go, okay, so if you go in with the expectation of you're going to see an apparition, you're looking everywhere everywhere for an apparition. You could have a door slam or swing open, but you miss it because you're focused on the apparition. You can
That's
have
right.
a voice come through audibly, but you miss it because you're focused on this happening.
It has to be a certain way. So we have to have no expectations of how something can manifest at all.
Right. And I said, and there are times where you will feel like when you leave, absolutely nothing happened. Check your devices, and you may have something, and you may not. We don't guarantee, we're going to connect with something or someone every time we go somewhere. And so that's why sometimes you'll see people go multiple times. Everything's different. And so you have to be aware not only of your environment, but you have to be aware of what's being used. And Jason's talking about the SLS camera. I actually don't put a lot of validity and a lot of, fact into the SLS because one thing you have to understand about the SLS camera, if you are in a room that has everywhere is flat walls, nothing else in there, that is the environment the SLS will work. If you have a room that has furniture in it or stud walls coming out, SLS will not work because anything that comes off of the S of the flat wall, it says there's a person here. And I questioned somebody about it, and I was like, no, this laser grid technology is not that, sensitive and that weak. It's not going to do that. And he goes, look. And he put it on a flat wall, and it showed nothing. And then we moved it over to where there was like what we call in engineering terms a pony wall. It's like a half wall that's coming out to separate two sections. All of a suddenly on this pony wall is this person stick figure moving. You move it away from the pony wall, it disappears. You move it back on the pony wall, they're back. And the guy goes, this isn't a ghost. This isn't a spirit. This is the wall. But people will identify it as a spirit because it looks like the bodies they're moving. And so that's where I used to want to get an SLS, but then I was like, nope, I'm not getting it because how many locations do we honestly go to that have no furniture, no nothing in it, and are purely flat surfaces? Hardly any. So I don't want to sit there and be like, yeah, I got this great footage, but it's most likely because there's a wall sticking out or there was a lamp there. And so to me, it's not worth the headache of trying to determine, is this on a flat surface or was there something that crossed its path and was sticking out? And so,
And so,
go ahead.
and some of us, well, I was going to say, some of us get, I've been lucky myself to go to places that are just creepy in nature because they have it. I still really believe when there's a natural element that's out of whack, it's sort of like when your spine's out of whack and it causes pain. Like if there's a disturbance in the house, like they're ripping out walls. Because I've noticed this with either some of the stories I've heard with when I did the tours, which was with the bed and breakfast that was in Asheville, which used to be the old Reed house that Samuel Reed lived in, that was connected to Biltmore, to George Vanderbilt. The stories were whenever they would do renovations to the house, that would kick up paranormal activity. And I even remember that in the place my grandmother lived, which was like a nursing home type of place. Well, it's called Deerfield, so it's nicer than it has like the assisted living, and then it has the skilled nursing and all that stuff. But when they would do construction work in the skilled nursing part, I remember going in the bathroom, the water would turn on and off by itself, and it wasn't those kind of sinks that the water does. It was just kind of a weird situation. And my husband even got attacked by one of the beings there. It's so there is something about, like, because if the house is in a very brand new place, I mean, I'm not saying paranormal activity doesn't happen, but I found from my personal experience, it's been less. It's always, at least I don't tap into it. I seem to tap into it when there's some kind of disturbance in the natural realm, whether, like I said, whether it's construction or it's mold, mildew, if there's something to do with electrical, especially like if the place is not electrically sound, not grounded properly, orbs can fly around. Because a lot of times when you fix those problems, like if it's electrical or it's a plumbing issue, a lot of that paranormal activity goes away.
So I actually was talking with Sharon Day yesterday, and we brought up like she had a house where it was haunted when she was growing up there, and when they went to renovate it to sell it to when they were moving out, the spirits got agitated. Well, we were talking about it, and what we came down to was, some spirits like things the way they are. They
That's
like
right.
having, everything is set the way they like it. They're not into change, which is kind of funny because they're an energy form that can change at will. But when you go to change something, they tend to react to it.
Right. Exactly.
Well, and I was pointing out to her saying, yeah, you were making these changes and you were moving out. Do you think the spirits might have been acting out because they didn't want you to leave? And she said, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so there's an aspect to, when you do remodel and you're breaking down walls and, redoing the floor plan, we don't realize that, there are other energies in that space that are comfortable with that. And so as you break their space, they're going to get agitated and they're going to be like, what are you doing? We're here too. You didn't ask us if we wanted this. You didn't ask us about, changing this. We didn't want this change. And so they may get upset and they may make tools not work. They may, drag it out. And you'll hear about that. But then when you hear about how a medium may show up or the owners say, look, we're not, destroying this. We're just upkeeping it so we can, you know, live here better and we're going to make it better for you as well. The activity subsides.
So
And
this
so,
makes me think, well, there's more things in the chat we need to address, but the spirits can be attached to a person. So it could be, thought forms, emotion. And maybe it's also about needing to clear the house often and proper feng shui. So those are other elements. If you don't want paranormal activity, maybe there's things you need to do. And if you do want paranormal activity, there's things you need to do. Some people have sigils just to bring in paranormal activity. It depends on what you're choosing.
yeah, and part of it has to do with your intention. If your intention is, oh, I'm going to, sell this place and move on and leave, they, may not want you to leave. And so they're going to make it hard. Or they may be like, it's about time you leave. And you may show up at your doorstep with your luggage outside, all packed up, and boxes all packed up, and the door is locked. And you're like, what just happened? And it's like the house was like, you're leaving. That's it. Now, my parents, before I was born, had a really interesting experience. So they moved to Brockton, New York, and found a place to stay. And when they went to move in, the owner says, "Here are all the keys. We don't keep a key. You're the only one with the key." And this was in the time, and this was like early 70s, maybe late 60s. I never really got a full like year from them about that. But so the story went, the owner said this house will only be rented for 6 months. When the 6 months is up, you new people will go in, and they're like, well, what if we decide to stay? Nobody stays after 6 months. So my parents are like, okay, that's fine. So they would tell me stories of like how a rag may move on the oven bar to the other side. They wanted it in this spot, and if you moved it back, they would move it back, or they would put it in the freezer. And so things would happen. TV would turn on by itself, or they'd hear the footsteps. And so this was normal for them, Okay, the house has sounds. They're not acting out. Well, one night when my parents had family over, and it was my mom's sister, her, I think, boyfriend at the time, or maybe they were married, or other things. But that aside, there was like six guys, six or three guys, three women staying in the house. A storm rolls in and they lose power. They can't find the panel to change the fuse and check the fuse. The next morning, after everybody has these experiences of hearing the TV going off on its own and footsteps walking around, a section of the wall pulls off on its own and reveals behind this bookcase type of paneling was the fuse box. Well, so they make this work, and my dad would go to work and he would open the door, close it behind him, and the door would open and close behind him. And his secretary would go, "Oh, your friend is here with you." So where he was working, they were totally okay with this ghost or spirit. And they would joke about it, and they were open to it. Well, 6-month time frame comes due. My parents come home with the moving truck, and the entire house has been packed up and there's stuff on the front porch. And the doors are locked, and they were like, "Okay, we're moving out. The house has decided we are moving out." And I just, when I hear that story, I was like, and the stories about that, I'm just like, wow. And so, yeah, the house spirits can take possession of the house and allow you to stay and help you leave.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that does happen. The house knows. I mean, it's crazy, but that's true. I mean, we had a movie about that, Amityville Horror. Not to go down that path, but yeah, there's all this kind of stuff going on. I know. I saw something about Estes, and I don't know if Jason was talking about Estes Park, which is where The Shining was filmed at the.
No, they're talking about the Estes method where you put headphones
Oh,
on and somebody will answer questions that they don't hear the questions. So it's like it's
okay.
showing spirits are hearing you and are responding to you. And so that's the Estes method in its basic form is you have sound canceling headphones on, so you're not supposed to be able to hear what people are asking, and you just respond what you're hearing.
I want to say hi to Jim and Matt. I see they just joined us, and for you guys to go back and watch the first little bit of this because I'm in a healing uh, place called Sacred Synergy. It's like a healing temple, healing space that has an Airbnb, and I played the paradigm. Julie is asking about a collaboration of doing Skywatch, and I've tried to get this going. I haven't done one since way before Helene, since Hurricane Helene. But what I've offered is people going up to and staying in Linville. People can stay there. I mean, this has just been for local people. So local people can just drive a couple hours and go up to Wiseman's View and go look at the Brown Mountain lights with my third generation night vision. This is another thing. You may see something and you may not. The conditions need to be right. It seems to be better when it's a little bit cooler and there's, electrostatics in the air. Sometimes rain helps, but you don't know. But what happens is the mountain produces something that's like a ball lightning, and that's because there's a cave system there, the Linville Caverns. I know Jim and Matt can probably talk more about this, but my theory is that the having running water from the gorge on a bed of crystal in this cave system acts as a huge capacitor. And when this cools at night, it contracts and releases. It makes this orb type of ball lightning that's plasma. And even the military is highly interested in this. And then it can take the form as UFOs, as a interdimensional consciousness or extra dimensional or whatever you want to call it, enters this plasma, and then it becomes like it looks like a ship. Because I remember that was some of the first UFO activity I saw in 2009, besides the nuts and bolts. And when you've seen plasma ships and when you've seen military craft, you know the difference, because the interdimensionals don't need metal craft. That's not, and it'll even take the form of rainbow lights, but it'll like dissolve into the mountain. So it's like when the consciousness isn't using that form, I don't know how they do it. They bilocate or not, it's not even the word bilocate, transfigure, translocate into another realm, like into these caves, which has a portal. That's what I think. But I just wanted to bring that up. So I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
Well, the plasma, yeah, I've seen light ships, I've seen UFOs, and it all depends on your intention and I think your energy and where you're at, because if you're just wanting to say, oh, I seen this, and oh, look, what this and this, they're not going to make themselves known to you. But if you genuinely want to connect, they'll make themselves known. And one thing I want to share, because you mentioned CE5, I went on a sky watching to Arkansas with friends of mine, and the location we went to was also happened to be a Bigfoot area. And so we are out in the middle of nowhere, and we walked around during the day and we would see different signs, and they would say, oh, this is Bigfoot. Oh, these are here for the Bigfoot to play with. Oh, this area is blocked off because of this or that. And I'm like, okay. And so at night, we go onto this like stage area that has walls on two sides, and then there's a solid wall in the back, but there's places to walk up in the back on one side. Well, as I'm walking around, I'm like, I'm not really seeing anything in the sky. So I decide it was Board Camp, Arkansas, Perry. I'm not sure which city it's actually in, but it was called Board Camp. And you could crystal hunt there as well. So there is that. But I look at this wall where there's some heavy metal, like used for locking some things, hanging on the wall. And I start to film it because I'm looking at something and I'm thinking what I'm looking at isn't making sense. And I go back and I look at the footage, and the middle metal thing that's hanging is swaying side to side. The two on the other ends are staying perfectly still. So my mind goes, okay, if a breeze comes through everything's going to move or nothing's going to move. The center cannot start moving without the other two moving. Something's got to be manipulating that. So I bring the lady over that is the caretaker, and I show it to her, and even she's in awe, going, "Yeah, I can't explain why this one's moving because it's not that it's heavier or lighter than the others; they're all the same." And so we start talking, and we start walking, and we get to like near a corner, and all of a suddenly this sound of something falling comes right behind me. Now it's pitch black, and so I don't know if, in full honesty, I don't know what happened. I just know when I turned around, there was a quartz crystal on the ground, and she would not pick it up. She said, "That's for you. You need to pick it up. It's a gift from the land to you." And so I went and picked it up, and the energy did feel different. And I was like, I could kind of feel something, but I was like, okay, I'm here to Skywatch. Let me put it in my pocket. And she was like, yeah, that crystal, that quartz came from another dimension because
It apported. They call that apporting.
yeah. And she's like, that's specifically for you. I was like, okay. So I go, and all of a suddenly I start to do an audio recording. I can hear people talking. And I said to the lady, you have a party, nearby. I can hear your neighbors having a party. And she goes, that's impossible. I said, why? Every property has neighbors. I have really good hearing. I probably can hear it better than you can because of that. And she goes, no, you don't understand. The nearest neighbor for us is like a couple miles down the road. And I was like, yeah, my hearing's not that good. So I'm hearing something in the woods. And she goes, you're hearing the Sasquatch. That has to be Sasquatch. I didn't see anything, so I can't say, yes, I heard Sasquatch. I will say, though, I heard communications that most people can't hear. And so that to me was really interesting. And when I took photos of the sky, because I'm one of those people where if I get guided to take a photo, like something says take a photo here, I'm going to take a few photos. Well, in one photo, I see the tree line is here, and it's this really nice, pretty dark blue in the background, and you can see the black trees. Well, all of a sudden, there's black lines here coming from the sky down to the planet, and I'm like, what is this? And they go, oh, I can't believe you caught that. And I'm like, what? And it was distorted. So it was like energy was being beamed down to the planet, and I caught it on film. Then I turn and I look to the left, and it looks like the sky's on fire. And I take a photo of it, and a few photos, and I zoom in, and it really does look like it's on fire, but it's too high to be like the land. And so there's no way there's like fire just hovering in the sky. So I'm like, this is really cool. And this was my first CE5. And so I'm like, if this is what CE5s are like, I don't need a laser. So I'm going to just, look up whenever I get a chance. And Terry, yes, I do see your comment that it is near Mena, Arkansas. Yes, that is the location that I went to. That is the one. And so that was my experience with the CE5 was, experiencing possible Bigfoot communication, seeing random things moving, things appearing out of thin air, and really interesting stuff in the sky that some of it you could see with the naked eye, and some of it you'd only see if you took a photo.
Yeah, I was just looking at all the chat, and I know some people have said on going to New Orleans. I mean, I think Jay brought up vampires there. I mean, I picked up that there's a lot of the yucky. I mean, great history in New Orleans, but I kind of like where TKB, where they are better. I mean, because
So,
they're nature, they've got caves that you can explore that nobody knows about, which means it's great for the Sasquatch energy as well as night vision, probably.
yeah,
And there's an airport there. Knoxville's not far. So there's a place to actually fly in. It's easier to drive for some people that are like people in Texas, closer for them to drive. People in North Carolina.
yeah.
I mean, Pittsburgh's not that far. Where New Orleans, I don't even know where you're going to stay. It's going to be too expensive for one. You have to go there when it's not hot and humid. Uh, and
Well,
then
and
there's crystal mining too. I mean, because in North Carolina, I
yeah.
went to the ruby mines, and then there was the emerald place. So there's all kinds of different things to do.
And New Orleans, I did a Paracon there, and some people were protesting the paranormal. Some people were open to it. There's a lot more drinking and a lot more people just being free. And so you have to watch what time you go there, what time frame. And there are haunted cemeteries there, but that's also because New Orleans is lower than sea level, so any amount
Right.
of rain will cause flooding.
That's
People
right.
didn't know this in the old days, so you would find, I tell this story in a comical, joking manner, but you would be sitting having breakfast, drinking your beer or your liquor because water wasn't very safe back then. They hadn't figured it out yet. And heavy rain comes by and grandma and grandpa could be floating by and pile up in the delta. And so then people had to be reburied. Well, problem is if someone floated by that's say 200 years old, they're not going to be able to open it up and go, oh, Jack, we found Jack. Okay, where was his grave? Oh, it's right here, and put him back. So a lot of people where we think are buried are not necessarily buried there because of all the flooding. And people like to go, oh, look at the stone mausoleums and look at the stone, the concrete, tombstones there and grave sites. And, there must be a lot of evil in this place because look at all the concrete. Well, actually, the correct answer is I call BS on that because they're in mausoleums and they're under concrete because they didn't want the bodies floating in the next rainstorm. They learned they had to concrete the cemeteries to keep the bodies from washing out with the rains. So a lot of legend and lore gets mixed in with not knowing the true history of the land. And so that's kind of a problem that I find with people going, oh, look, this person's concreted over. They must have been a witch or a vampire because they didn't want them resurrecting. It's like, no, They didn't want them floating by in the next rainstorm. I have to bury them again.
I'm just talking about what I felt remotely, like energetically, like there's some kind of vampiric energy, probably because of different government systems, financial systems, and even the spirit, like we were talking about, the spirit of Al
Mhm.
Ghul definitely lurks in New Orleans. You know, there's this
Oh,
party
yeah,
spirit, which may not be, and I pick up it's kind of a reversal gate, just like Charleston is, you know, because Charleston, you know, not only the trauma of the Civil War, which I'll be covering again on Rob's show tomorrow with Chloe when we do a deep dive into Pittsburgh. We're actually going to do a deep dive and take a look at Pittsburgh and how it connects to the extension arm of the Potomac River and some of the other things we did on the last show with Chloe, the whimsical Wednesday, you know, my
yeah,
Tuesday and her Wednesday, but it was actually on a Sunday. So we're going to do that, but you know,
yeah.
because the first liquor store was actually in Charleston, and there that has its own energetic, the spirit of Al Ghul and the tavern on Rainbow Row and how it holds reverse rainbow codes. But this is like energetic, like etheric templating that we're going in a more practical way of the paranormal right now, and maybe not so much into the esoteric chelantic science way of looking at whether things are dead light
Yeah.
structures or they're living light structures. I'm not necessarily going there today, but just for the conducive of getting together, having a campfire, being able to talk. I don't think New Orleans is the place, just on a very practical level. I mean, it's
Well,
great if you have a
yeah.
historical tour you want to do in New Orleans, but where are you going to stay?
New Orleans is a hodgepodge. Yes,
Yes,
there is dark energies there. There are actually vampires there. I'm
yes,
just pointing out people before jumping to conclusions as paranormal investigators need to know the history of the place and
right.
know what's going on because yeah, New Orleans has a different feel and a different view than most cities, so you could easily get confused by what you're looking at and claim something that's not. Now, there is also, a lot of dark voodoo history. There's a lot of hoodoo history, Santorini there.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of energies mixing there that does make the city very different, and it depends on which part of the city you go to. Some elements of the city has higher energies than others because of what's been going on there and how the people are. Because some people will sit there and be like, "Oh, we're living in the darker energies, so we're gonna do the quote goth thing," and they'll help personify the energy and they'll help tell the story of what's going there. And yes, I appreciate keeping the history alive and keeping the knowledge of what's gone on there alive, but we also need to be careful that we don't turn ourselves into that history, that
Right.
we remember we are here, that was then, this is now.
And that's back to the whole thing about the tulpas, and is that history because you want a bar to be haunted. You know, there's some pub you want to go in and they said it was haunted. Well, it stays haunted because that's what people want every time they go there and have drinks and retell those stories. Because after all, we are a story species, and it is story medicine, as Gina would say in the chat, to relive
Yeah,
those stories. And that is important for our culture to do that, but we need to know the difference.
right. There is telling a story and sharing the medicine of the story and getting stuck in the story.
Right.
That's what we need to be careful of, that we don't get stuck. And so one thing I like to point out too, is being in New Orleans like a few times and actually investigating somewhat. I didn't really get to investigate because I was at my first Paracon as a speaker, and so I was like, oh, I was nervous because I didn't know when I was going on. I didn't want to miss something and oversleep, so I missed out on a few things. But I will say, though, I find it interesting how the universe works with like synchronicities of I went and I was watching something and all of a suddenly on YouTube I went looking for something because I heard about the Battle of New Orleans when the Revolutionary War was going on. And I was like, Battle of New Orleans, this is the first I'm hearing of it. I even have a history degree. And I'm like, I never heard of, really heard of this before. What's going on? And they go, yeah. And, this battle, it was so important. It was even memorable. It was memorable. Blah, blah. Forget the word. I'm not going to be able to say it right now. It was remembered in song. And so I went to hear the song and I was like, hey, this is actually a catchy song. And so I now find myself at various times, I'll hear that song now pop in my head and start playing. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I need to go to the location of the Battle of New Orleans. And I've been trying to figure out, where exactly it is. When can I get over into that area and go investigate it and walk around it? And one thing I will say about, paranormal investigating that is a little bit unique is if you are a medium or you are a channel and you're in the paranormal field, you have more access to doing paranormal investigations than other paranormal investigators who rely on equipment. Because let's take for example, the Alamo in San Antonio, Texas,
Oh yeah, I've
national
been there
landmark,
too. Yep.
and they're like, no, you cannot paranormal investigate. Well, as a medium or a channel, I most certainly can because I don't turn that ability on or off. It's
Right. You
always
don't
there.
need equipment. You don't have to bring in Geiger counters, EMF things, and tri-field meters to do that. I don't use those. I mean, I've been on
Yeah.
tours where people use them, but I don't want to carry them around. I just use sometimes a pendulum, or actually my body's the pendulum. I really don't need anything.
Yeah. And so I respect the property and I respect the rules, that's laid out, that owners have or locations have. But I've also started to realize, like I'll talk to a friend of mine who has a paranormal team and I'll say to her, hey, we could go check out this location. And do you have any mediums in your team? Because if we take them with us, we're not allowed to investigate this. And, we could get in serious trouble for using equipment because it's not allowed. But mediums, they never will know. They will never see. And so I'm like, we could totally use them to investigate this location and do like a mini investigation. And it's like kind of like skirting the rules without breaking the rules. And I'm like, that is so weird that, I've gotten to that point in my life where I'm like, yeah, we can skirt the rules. We're not breaking the rules, but we technically
Right.
are
Or you could,
breaking the rules.
I want to bring it back to Tennessee because Tennessee, There's no place I'd rather be. I just know Eric knows that song. Okay, the Foots have been there's a giant meeting every year in the Appalachians, and the Appalachians may just be a good meeting place. Yeah, Gatlinburg is a fun town. There's a bunch of
Oh yeah.
Ripley stuff there. I love the Ripley's Aquarium. I'm usually a member of Ripley's, believe it or not, aquarium. I love it. It's very relaxing. Townsend, Tennessee. I think that's the place of the Thomas Kincaid artwork. I'm pretty sure. Correct me. I mean, it really is. And there's an airport there. And then you're not far from and then there's Pigeon Forge. The Titanic Museum is
Hollywood. Yeah.
interesting there. You're on your 441, which is the Smoky Mountain National Park, goes through there, so you can get on the park. And if you want to go to the highest top, the closest one to there would probably be what do they call it now? They changed it to the Indian name, but now it used to be called Klingman's Dome. I don't know. I think they should keep it both names, whatever the Cherokee name is, and and then if you really want to go lose some money, you can go to the casino. Or if you want to test out your magical skills on seeing if you can win money at the casino, you're not far from there either.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, Gatlinburg is also near Eureka Springs or the Eureka Hotel.
That sounds like California to me, Eureka or Yreka. I don't know about that. That I don't know.
I think there's Eureka Springs, or maybe it's Hot Springs, and it's the Eureka Hotel in Hot Springs that's really haunted. But there's a Tennessee.
In Hot Springs, North Carolina, there's a Hot Springs, North Carolina, which is an itty bitty town, which is on the French Broad River that used to have a campground. Doesn't seem to be open. It does have a few Airbnb sites. Not much to stay there anymore, especially since Helena. It used to have Huck Finn rafting that I don't even think that's not open anymore. So,
but yeah,
I don't know.
Nashville. I know Nashville's not too close, but if you ever get the chance, there is some hidden architecture in Nashville that is very transformative.
The Parthenon you're talking about, right? That William Henry did a deep dive on. I've been there a couple times with the great statue of Athena. It looks like all this Nephilim stuff to me.
Yeah, I've been there, and I've been there with William Henry. He's actually
cool. I met him too.
I've known him for 20 years, and he guided us on the National Bicentennial Mall.
Yes, that's it. Yep.
And that mall will really stir up your energy and your chakras like nothing else. And it's an amazing place to walk. And one of my favorite things to do while I'm on the mall is on the left side as you're going up the chakras. On the, you have a Black Obsidian timeline of events to the Americas and the world. But there's this black obsidian globe that's sitting on water, and it's solid obsidian, and it's huge. And it's carved on it is the outline of the obsidian is the globe, like the way it looked then. But the really cool thing is you can put your hand up like this, and if you push down, all of a suddenly this black obsidian ball starts to spin. And it does not take a lot of energy to make this ball move, but it is extremely heavy, and so it's amazing how the water, to me, makes it feel so light. But Terry's corrected me. She says Hotel Hot Springs in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, is the Crescent Hotel.
Oh, okay. And then Arkansas, Arkansas was really interesting to go into the town of Hot Springs and go where Al Capone, the Arlington Hotel, and then the water goes through there. I can tell you this: Nashville is 2 hours west of Knoxville on I-40. So from Asheville, for me, that's about 5 hours. I mean, I still think it's better to do something in the mountains than in a big city. I mean, the thing about
Yeah.
Knoxville is a city, but Gatlinburg is not a big city. It's more of a tourist place. And then there's Seaverville. So there's all these surrounding areas. TKB knows the area much better than me. I know it from driving through and staying in
Yeah.
Gatlinburg quite regularly. I mean, I've done a lot of Gatlinburg trips.
The only problem with picking Tennessee is climate wise, you are very limited because people don't realize this, but it can get hotter in Tennessee than Texas and Arizona. And so
Not if
it's
it's in the fall or something, sometime when either the spring or the fall. I don't think summer is great even for paranormal investigations. I've heard from people that I know that are into the whole Bigfoot things. They say they migrate certain times. Like in the summer, you're not going to see them as much when it's hot. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I've heard from Christian, who does his, I can't remember his, Christian McLeod, when he did his Bigfoot things that
yeah.
he used to do.
And Terry's bringing up Branson, Missouri. Branson's kind of got a little bit of history to it. Might be fun.
It's got a lot of
But,
casinos too. I know that because a friend of mine gets free rooms at casinos, not for everybody, but she gets me free rooms. I mean, anything connected to Harrah's, she can get it because she was a nurse and she took care of this old lady, and somehow she inherited the diamond status when the old lady passed. So that's kind of
wow.
and then she has to
Yeah.
keep it active by using free play and using it once in a while. So we'll be going to Cherokee in about let's see, about 12 or so days, almost 2 weeks from now. I'll be going to Cherokee again. I'm in for my first thing would be probably somewhere in Tennessee. Not just because it's close to me, but I think it has more to offer of what we want to do without having as much of the city lifestyle. And especially if we want somebody that is the boots on the ground guide, and there's three of us that know the area well. I mean, they know that area better, but I know a lot of the other stuff, so.
Yeah. And
how far is that from you, Michael? How far for you is it to go to, say, Knoxville? Where are you again?
I'm in Texas, so for me, I'm like I'm like an hour and a half from the Oklahoma border to the north.
Christian,
And
Oklahoma.
three and a half hours east is Louisiana, Shreveport. So I'm on the northeastern side of Texas, but the thing is, like, getting to Nashville, that's like a 12-hour drive to Nashville. So it's like a
Really?
whole day just to get to Tennessee for me, pretty much.
Yeah.
But the funny thing about that, traveling wise, is, I can say, yeah, getting to Tennessee is like a day, but I can drive into Missouri, the Missouri Alabama border as well in a day. And so it's like, it depends on where I'm at and, how fast I can get on highways that, yeah, I can cross a lot of states in less time because I'm one of those drivers that if I have somewhere I really need to get to that's far, I will turn off my innate wanting to stop off and check out a bunch of stuff and get there on time. Whereas if I, if I have a day, I'll stop off on places along the way and take my time getting there. And so it's depends on my mindset at the time of how I'm going. How little am I going to stop on the road? Am I only going to stop for gas? Then yeah, I'll get there a lot sooner. But
Where are the Marfa lights?
the Marfa Lights are southwest Texas, down closer to the Mexico border.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's a
Then
ways too.
yeah,
I think
but
Texas has to be the winner. I wanted to bring this up before circle back around with the ghosts before we close, because we were. This is Robert the Doll. For I've showed him before. I happened to go to.
that's a mini Robert.
Yeah, I went to Key West,
So
and
have I.
you've seen Robert. Well, what Robert showed me was nothing to do with being a haunted doll. I saw holographically the collective. I don't know if I talked about this before with you. That's like attached to Robert. So it's like a holographic, and I saw him as the guardian gatekeeper of the East Fort Martello Museum. But it was like this was the place where the Atlantic Ocean of Stargate 3 Bermuda Triangle and Stargate 2 Gulf of America Mexico were dissolving into each other at this point. And he's like the guardian and was showing me holographically, things like kids used to play with toys and now they do this all the time. And he was sad, but not really sad, because a ghost can't be sad, but all the people that have interacted with him and their collective soul body. So it was like it was like the people that go see Robert, and then the people that Robert's people that have seen him are connected to their family of origin, their soul collective, their oversoul. I mean, it was just a weird holographic imagery that really had nothing to do with a haunted doll. And seeing things like the rise of the Industrial Revolution, like World War I, World War II, and that was right before this stuff with the Israel and all that, that Gaza or Strait of Hormuz stuff, which I don't want to go down that road at all. But before that broke out, and I just thought it was very interesting because, again, it just circles back around to when we're dealing with ghosts and thought forms, haunted objects, haunted places. What are we dealing with? We're dealing with the energy that surrounds us, whether it's your other show, whether it's a positive charge, whether it's a negative charge, whether it's some kind of blend of the two, of electric and electric magnetic, electromagnetism. What are your thoughts on that?
I have to say I think there is credence to that, because I was remembering as you were talking about that when I went to visit Robert, one of the things that, the first thing they said is don't take a picture of him
Right.
without asking, and don't mention his name because that will invite him in. And I was thinking, oh, that's paranormal lore, whatever. But when I started thinking about it and realizing, like you're saying, seeing him on this grid, connected on this grid, it's like, how many people have seen him are now on this grid? And yeah, if there's actually is a house like an hour from where I live, that on the second floor of this house in glass is another Robert the Doll. And so I'm like, oh, there's another one, and
Yeah.
it's active too. And so and I've often wondered, are they linked or anything? But energy wise, it kind of makes sense if he, is on this grid system, that everyone who's ever seen him or interacted with him is on this grid. And when you mention his name, can spark up and be like, oh yeah, he knows you're talking about him, and it would make sense how he would know and be like, oh, is this, are they talking good, are they talking bad, what's going on, do I need to do something or not. But I don't think the doll, and I feel the same way about Annabelle a little bit, is there an energy and there's a presence there, yes. But the interactions, do I feel like if my path crossed Annabelle's, is she going to try and kill me? Because that's like what the movies show. No, I don't think so. Is Robert, going to come after me because I mentioned his name and snuck a photo of him? No, you know,
Well,
because if that was true, there'd be no photos of him on the internet because nobody would know what he'd look like because everybody'd be afraid to look at him. And
he said to me, or whatever the energy was, said, it's what your belief system is. If you're afraid, you're going to create bad things happening. And if you think
right,
it's good, you're going to create good things happening. So for me, good synchronicity started happening. Now was respectful, and I got, well, maybe I need to take a picture at a distance, but when I go back, I'm allowed to take a full on picture because I was allowed, but I was being respectful just out of, being like concerned, like, well, maybe I better just
ooh.
not be in a space too much, not get too close where I'm invading this personal space, although he has a boundary around him because it's glass. But yeah.
Well, and in all honesty, I, I'm not sure I should mention this because I know some people will freak out probably about this, but so, these spirits are energy, and we'd like to think because something is in glass, that energy is contained and is there.
Oh yeah,
However,
that's true too. That you're absolutely right, but it makes you
it's
feel that there's a boundary, even though there
right.
really is no boundary, but you kind of feel that way. The crazy thing is they bind spirit. Wait, can you read that better than me? I got to read it from here.
The crazy thing is they bind the spirit in the Annabelle doll. They won't let it go to the light. It is a curse in redheads. The spirit is an old clown. Forget his name, redhead.
That
And
brings me back to Zach Bagans with all the clowns, and then that doll Peggy that was in deplorable conditions. It was just horrible, playing this awful tones and like in a cage. Oh, it was just horrible.
yeah.
But it was all about the agitation again, as you were saying.
So here's the thing. So TKB, you bring up something very interesting. Because they bound a spirit into the doll is no longer a doll. It becomes
That's
known
right.
as what's called a vessel doll. It's a vessel now. So that spirit is residing in that doll. And so it has possession of that doll. What that means in reality is if this angry spirit wants to, do something to someone because of what they did, this doll can be placed, in their house, and it's going to become a mental thing. Like, you'll hear stories of, well, they went to throw the doll out because they were being creeped out, but then when they turn around, the doll's back in the house. Well, how is that? Well, this vessel doll has been charged with a mission, so to speak. Its mission is to drive you insane, and it's kind of like the curse. It's going to drive you insane. It's going to freak you out. It's going to, make your life miserable, which is what people are wanting. That's why they put that energy into the doll.
And
That's
similar with
their
Robert
intention.
too. I mean, Robert, I think, was created in Germany originally, the type of doll that it was, and that was altered by that woman that was like the caretaker or maid or something of Robert Eugene Otto. I can't remember all the history of it, but yeah, that same type of a thing where they're it's like a minion where they're wanting it to do bidding with by putting the hoodoo and the voodoo and the Santeria or
Yeah.
whatever dark magic they'll use in it, you know.
And so, yeah, I mean, so when you look at it that way, it's like, the doll isn't the evil entity or the evilness. It's actually the person who put that energy into the doll. That's the trueness. And, and curses. Okay, so interesting thing about curses is I've, had to deal with the curse in my life being placed on me and had to be cleared of it and got it cleared off and learned how to defend against it. So when we talk about curses, I just want to make clear a curse is not something from the land, or it's not something that you touched something you shouldn't have touched and now you're cursed. That's not how the curse works. The curse works when somebody says, if you do this, this will happen. So, an example of that is, the Egyptians. If you were to rob Pharaoh's tombs, you were going to get sick and you would die. You would not enjoy the wealth. That's the curse. It's not that you touched a, old, relic or breathed in, bad air. Or stale air. It's your mind heard this story and so you made it a reality. And so that's the true nature of the curse is you hear it, you believe it, you now empowered it, it will enact. If you hear it and you don't believe it, you can walk through like an old tomb with stale air and you'll be totally fine. You may get a little cough or you may get like old and have to, get that cleared out of your system, but you're going to be all right. It's more of a mental intention to the curse. And so I'm glad you asked that, Terry, because that is something I've had to do some research on. And generational curses, so those work because people believe the family story. So if like Native Americans, when they would be attacked by someone, they would say curse upon your generations, or like Shakespeare with Romeo and Juliet, a curse upon your family name. Well, let's look at, like Shakespeare, for example, with Romeo and Juliet. A curse was put on the name of Capulet and Montague. Well, what happens today? You mention the name Montague or Capulet, people go, oh, yeah, that's the feuding family of Romeo and Juliet. William Shakespeare. That's the curse that was placed upon the name. It's forever known as this feuding family that's doomed. curses being, Hatfields and McCoys. They went and feuded for years. Nobody knew why. They just did. Generational curses are around because it's part of the family lore. It's part of the family history. So it brings it with them. And so you can break the curse by taking the power out of the curse. And what that means is, let's say, like, you're the last Hatfield and the last McCoy, and you happen to be a male and a female. You get married, family merges, hey, feud's over.
That's right.
End of story. Nobody hears about the Hatfields and McCoys anymore.
Yeah, they do. There's a dinner
Well,
show. You can go to the dinner show in Gatlinburg, the Hatfield and McCoy dinner show.
Well, but I'm meaning is like, it's not like in the press. Oh, the Hatfields and the McCoys are shooting at each other again. The feud is on again. No, the feud died, and when the feud died, it's like everybody's interest in the feud kind of died with it. And historians like to bring it up and write books about it, and occasionally there'll be a TV show or movie about it, or like she's saying, dinner show about it. But people are at choice to hear about it. It's not out there.
Here's a comment from TKB. The old Raggedy Ann has a triangle nose, alphabets under its clothes, and like Ouija boards. Not sure what it means. And then the next comment was the one that's on the screen. You can go ahead and read that.
It says, on your dull explanation, I guess, like Jesus put spirits in pigs. To kill a spirit, it has to die in a body. Like many trees hold spirits, and when the tree does, it dies.
That's right. I agree with that, kind of. Yeah. I know where he's going with it.
I'll be honest, I'm not really prolific in the Bible, so I've never heard of Jesus putting spirits into a pig. So
yeah, he was casting demons out. I don't remember where it is, but it was like casting demons and putting them into the swine, something like that. I can't remember, but I know what he's talking about. I just don't remember it exactly.
Okay. But so in my experience, though, to kill a spirit, it doesn't go into a body. I have never had to, when removing a spirit from somewhere, had to put it into a physicality. I just return the spirit to source energy.
Well, you can do that.
Which it came from.
But that's putting it somewhere. It has to go somewhere.
Or I release it from the land, and I'm like, hey, you no longer have permission to this land, so you have to go somewhere else. And and you can make it. And so here's the thing about this too, that the power of the word and intention is, if I was to say to a spirit that is being unruly, hey, you no longer have permission to be in this house, he could sit in the front yard because he's not in the house.
That's right.
He just can't enter the house. Now, if I say to him, hey, you no longer have permission to be in the United States, anywhere that is owned by or named United States, he cannot be. So he can hang out in Mexico, Canada, the Caribbean, but like Hawaii, no go. Alaska, no go. The U.S. Virgin Islands, no go. Puerto Rico would be a no go because that's considered U.S.
Right.
And so that's where they say, your intention is everything, is your intention and your words have to be in sync. So if you want something removed from your area and you like to travel, you totally have the ability to even go as far as to say, Spirit, I revoke your permission to be on the planet Earth. And it no longer has permission to be on the Earth and has to find another planet or another place to be, but it won't be on Earth. As long as you hold true to that. And what I mean by that is, let's say you remove a spirit from your home. A year from now, you're talking to a friend, and a friend goes, Hey, I noticed your house is more at ease. Do you finally get rid of that spirit? Oh, yeah, that spirit, was doing this and this and this, and it was driving us nuts and everything. Well, guess what? You have now invited that spirit back because you mentioned it and you put energy towards it. So now you got to clear it out again. That's the trick of intention and using your words, because you have to be always vigil.
Yep, that's right. And with that, I want to give another tour because I really didn't get much sleep last night. It was so hot in the house, and I really didn't eat any breakfast or lunch today either because my whole system is a mess. So I'm going to just want to do this. And again, show where I am here. So this is one of the healing rooms. There's one upstairs. If you go back and watch the beginning, so this place, I'm cat sitting here, and they Airbnb this sacred synergy site out, and they've
Is that
got
Arthur?
Arthur is actually in the other room. Let me get Arthur. Arthur, come here. No,
it just surprised me when you said cat and didn't call it by name. I was like, wait.
They're cats. I'm cat sitting their cats. Let's see if Arthur comes out on his own. Arthur, are you going to come? I'm going to let him. Okay. So, with that, any closing remarks on how people can find you?
I can be found on Facebook. That seems to be the easiest way to find me, and send me a friend request because I don't always respond to messages because I don't see them unless we're friends. And so if you send me a friend request, also put in the message, hey, I've seen you on Missy's show, and that'll help me figure out who you are. And you're more likely to get accepted as a friend that way. But that's the easiest way to find me, is either on Facebook or through my link tree, because that'll connect you to everywhere I'm at. And I am just fascinated by this location.
Yeah, I always know how to pick them. I'm telling you. And then there's this zapping thing. Where is that thing that I want to show you? This device.
The zapping thing.
The thing that clears your energy field and it smells like negative ions. It smells like when you, and I could use it on my neck right now because my neck's bothering me. You know how when you have those things that go on the cigarette lighter in the car to clear the air, make it smell like a rainstorm? That's exactly what that is. Yeah. So I'm going to be speaking again on Sunday at a church at the Center for Spiritual Living. We did one last week, which was for the the release of the Boards of Canada album. And this time I'm going to be talking about the Carolinas, the connection between, you know, the mountains to sea trail, starting at Mount Mitchell, the highest point, which is 6,684 feet, and making its way down to Charleston, and also talking about some of the really old trees. There's a tree that's 365 years old that it stands on this property of where I'm going to be on Sunday. And there's also the angel tree down in James Island, and how these trees talk through the mycelium network. And then the last grid work Chloe and I did discovered a 422-year-old tree near the Potomac River. All these trees hold that history. So with that, you guys, this is Galactic Earth Fusion Mission Upgrade, and you'll catch us on the next one. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
See you guys on Typical Skeptic tomorrow evening at 9 p.m. And have a happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th, everyone.
Namaste.